Hey, Real Green Ninja here. The video you're about to watch is a supplement to the existing tutorials and help videos already available on the Real Green website. I do take a more casual approach because I'm presenting this information as I would if you called in, although I may have a little fun with it. This video is based upon the information I, as a Real Green technician, would provide using my experience on the help desk. This video was created on my own time to assist with areas of the software that may be waiting for an official help video or tutorial. At the beginning of the training video, I will have the version of the Service Assistant the video was made with. I will also try to be as accurate as possible, but be aware, as Service Assistant updates are released, things may change. I'm using the name Real Green Ninja as not to stand out from the other amazing technicians that I work with. I hope the information in this video helps you, so grab a cup of coffee, and I hope you learned something new. Hey, Real Green Ninja here. This is another video in the parameters series. We're going to talk about how to make the software work the way you need it to for your company. So let's begin. Today we're going to talk about data, company parameters, and general setup. This is a big one. There's a lot of different options, and again, this is the way the software works. On the first tab here, I'm not going to go through every single option here, but on the first tab here, this is your defaults for your statements and invoices. What this means is when you open up the statement screen or the invoice screen and you go, oops, wrong one there. Let's go to invoices. There we go. When you go to the options tab here, these are the default settings that are going to be set if you ever have to reset the screen. Okay. So again, you can control whether or not the logo is checked by default or showing by default and so on. So if you don't want your employees to be able to make changes while they're running their invoices, you can disable override. And what that means is only going to let them use the settings that you set up on the screen here. You can also disable associations. So associations are where you're going to say, you know what, if the customer has a service over here and they also have one of these services over here, put those two services on the same invoice. Like I said, I'm not going to go through every single setting, just the ones that are important to this particular screen. And when I do my invoices video, I will go through more detail of the settings. But as I kept saying, is that this is the default settings that if you reset that screen, those are the settings that are going to be reset to. Now, I do want to point out one group of settings here. The ones down here in the bottom, these are your credit hold settings. And what this means is if the customer exceeds these settings, the person's going to be put on credit hold. This is there to protect you as a company because you don't want to keep doing work for someone that's not paying you. And right now, MindStop's saying if they owe more than $100 over 60 days, do not pull work for this person. That means I will not be able to pull invoices normally. There are ways of overriding it. Again, we'll go into more detail when we talk about pulling work. But again, these are the settings that you can set. And you can also set separate ones for residential and commercial because maybe you want to be a little bit more relaxed on the commercial ones because maybe they pay on the quarter or maybe they don't pay as quickly as the commercial customers. So you might have residential customers 30 days and commercial customers 120s. Same thing over here on statements. Again, you're setting the default settings for when you reset that statement screen, and then of course you can also disable the statement option button on the option screen, or the option button on the statement screen also. Okay. Now over here, this is where you can set your aging categories, and these are different categories money is going to fall into as time goes on. And again, this is for money that they owe you. So let's say, for example, someone owes you $150. Well, that $150 might not be from the last time you did service. That $150 might be from yesterday, or I'm sorry, $50 from yesterday, $50 from a month ago, and then $50 from 2 months ago. So again, you can set your own aging categories up to 6 different ones. And it would be like 0 to 15, 16 to 30, 31 to 45, 46 to 60. The most common settings, the ones that are set up by default, are usually 30, 60, 90, 120. And you can pull reports against those different aging categories, as well as, again, that affects whether or not that person goes on credit hold. You can also set up interest charges on the screen as well. And let's say, for example, you don't want to charge your commercial customers interest until it gets to that 90-day mark. Or let's say for the commercial customers, you really want to charge them interest if they don't pay within 16 days of service. Again, you can fine-tune how the software is behaving. Now, if you don't want to charge interest at all, you can just hit no charges and you'll see those checkboxes disappear. But again, if you want to charge interest, you can set it for interest. Now, when you charge interest, what it's going to say, it's going to say if the interest calculated is at least this amount of money here, then charge them a minimum interest charge of $1 at 1.5% interest. So, for example, you say, you know what, they have to owe at least 25 cents interest, so I can put 0.25, and if they owe at least 25 cents, there will be hit with a $1 interest charge. $1 is like the minimum, and then, of course, again, the interest rate's 1.5. Now, as far as what number to put in that percentage, it's up to you, okay? By default, we usually have 1.5, which is about 18%, or which is 18% interest a year. I mean, I actually saw some customer, or one guy that actually had that set at like 50. I'm like, or I'm sorry, 10%, and I'm like, that's like 120% interest a year. That's not really something you want to put in there because you might get in trouble with your local government, the usury laws and stuff like that for charging too much interest. Now, again, I'm not going to question how someone uses software, but if I see something kind of obvious, I'll let them know, okay? Because they might not be aware that that's actually every time you charge interest, and you're limited to charging interest once every 30 days. Now, you may not charge interest, but you might charge a statement fee. Again, it's going to follow the same things. You'll notice the interest is now set to it's an interest fee. It's now set to statement fee. And this is where you're going to say, you know what? If they're going to get a statement, it's going to cost them $5 because it costs money for postage. You got to print it out. You got to have someone to fold them and all that type of stuff. Of course, Real Green, we do sell statements, or we do. You can send us your statements, and we'll print them out and put postage on them for you. Again, you want to talk to our print shop for information concerning that. But like I said, you can actually fine tune how the software behaves. Now, that's the aging statement and invoice. Let's go to miscellaneous. This is going to be a longer one too. On the miscellaneous tab, this is where you're going to, again, tell the system how you want it to behave. For example, when it has to calculate prices, do you want to round it off to the nearest, which follows the normal rounding rules, where 4 or less rounds down, 5 or higher rounds up? Do you want to round it off to the next penny? Do you want to round it off to the next nickel, dime, dollar, whatever? Again, you can fine-tune how the software is behaving. You can also tell it, do not interpolate pricing. Now, it took me a couple months to wrap my brain around what exactly that means, and I finally understood. I'm hoping I can explain it in a way that makes sense to you. When you create a price chart, what you're going to do is you're going to say, okay, if it's 1,000 square feet, it's $10, 2,000 is 20, 3 is 30, and so on and so forth. Now, if you want the system to bump up to the next level, if someone falls between two numbers, you want to have that checked. You're telling the system, do not interpolate, do not figure where they fall in the spectrum. Just bump them up to the next. So going back to my example, 1 is 10, 2 is 20, 3 is 30. 1.5 would bump them up to the 2, which would then charge them $20 if this is checked. If this is not checked, it's going to try to calculate where it falls between those two numbers, and then of course round to the nearest or round to the next, depending on how you have it set up. So going back to our example, if I were to uncheck it, 1 is 10, 2 is 20, 3 is 30, 1.5 wouldn't bump up. It would actually calculate out to $15. So again, you're deciding how you want the software to behave. All right, over here in production defaults, this is what you're allowed to enter. It's not what's required, but it's what you're allowed to enter. It doesn't hurt anything to have them checkmarked because it gives you the ability to put the information if you want to. But again, if by default you do not want people to enter this information, you can turn it off. Text scan mobile, this is going to be whether or not they can enter that information on their mobile device. Required information, this means that you are required to put this information before you can save a customer or a program job. For example, if I have title required, I have to put in Mr., Mrs., Doctor, or whatever. Now, if you have a lot of commercial customers and you don't have like a point of contact, you just send the bill to Dow Chemicals. You don't want to send to Mr. Dow Chemicals, so again, you might turn that off. Or you might create a blank title. Again, it's one of those things where you're better off just turning it off because sometimes the software doesn't like blank fields or blank lines. If you cancel out a customer, it's going to require that you put in a cancel date and cancel reason. It's also, you can put in request email. Now, what request email does is every time you go into that customer's account screen, it's going to pop up a message saying, hey, remember to get this person's email, but it's not going to actually make it so you can't save it if you don't have the email. Sometimes that can become kind of annoying. So again, it's up to you if you want to have it turned off. I have mine turned off because if I'm flipping through customers using those little green arrows at the top, I don't like having to keep clicking OK on those windows that pop up. Again, this is my test data. You can also require a call log outcome. Again, this is a part of the call log, and maybe I'll do a video about the call log and I'll explain how outcomes and stuff work. But this requires whether or not you have to have an outcome. Again, if you want to save a program or job, you have to have a date sold. You have to have a salesperson, source size, so on. If you cancel them, also you can indicate if you have to have a required estimated by. So again, these are the required things that you have to have before you're allowed to save it, depending on what you're doing. Over here, country, United States. Most of our clients are in the United States, but we have some people in Canada. We've actually expanded out to UK, Australia, and India. Oh my gosh, it's been a long week. Ireland. So again, most people are either going to be United States or Canada. Allow future sales date. Now, again, I have tested. I've been playing around with things, so I had mine turned on. But normally, you would have it turned off. The allow and the limit past sales date, limit past cancel dates. This kind of controls how people can manipulate those sales and cancel dates for customer jobs and stuff. Because you might not want your salespeople to be able to manipulate those dates, because that can change what commissions those people are going to be paid. So again, most people don't even allow their salespeople to get in there. But if you do want to, again, be careful doing those settings, because they could manipulate reports and make it so they can maximize their commissions out. Also, it's going to ask you what the default service here is. So, for example, if you go into the production screen, by default, it's going to be for 2015. When you do process renewals at the end of the year, sometimes it's up to you to decide if you want to bump it up to the next season or leave it at the current service year, just because you might still have stuff for 2014 that needs to be processed, and you might want to hold off on bumping it up just because you don't want to actually do something on the 2015 service year. You can indicate the company type, something like L for lawn, or P for pest and stuff like that. Again, most people that use our software, they only have like the one company or company branch. They might not even put anything in there. Name and address. Upper means everything is uppercase. Proper means capital letter for the first letter of the name, and then lowercase for the rest. The sense date, the creation date, earliest transaction, earliest sold date. Again, you decide how you want the software to behave. The sense date is how long that person's been a customer of yours. Personally, I like the creation date. When were they added to the system? Because that's when I'm going to start marketing them. That's when I'm going to start doing work for them, or that's when I'm going to start, doing something about that customer. But some people like to use the earliest transaction date. The earliest transaction date would be the earliest date that you did something for them. So, for example, the first time they paid, the first time they put in production, that type of thing. You could also do earliest sold date. An earliest sold date would be the earliest sold date on a program or service they have. But the thing you have to be careful with, as far as what date you want to use, is when you're running a report, for example, a customer list. Oops, that's not what customer list. There we go. You can actually filter it by sense date. All right. If you use something like earliest transaction or earliest sold, and you haven't done either of those events for that person, their sense date will actually be blank. So again, it's up to you how you want it to work. I usually, like when my test day and stuff, I just have it as a creation date. Some people like the transaction date, but just again, be aware that if you have a blank, you would not actually be able to search for someone and say, okay, well, how many people have signed up for this month? You wouldn't find any of those people because they don't have a date yet. So again, each company works different. I never question why they want to do it. I just try to make it work the way they want. Map codes. Map codes are an older way of doing your routing. A lot of people don't use them anymore. Now with the mapping assistant and being able to throw things on an actual map and see where they're located and stuff, it just makes it easier. But map codes are a filter for when you're pulling your work and stuff like that. But again, this is the format that you want to put in there. Default credit limit. Default credit limit is what the customer's credit limit is when you create a new customer. But you can change that. This is just a number it's going to throw in there. You can have whatever number you want in there, but you don't want to put something too low, because if you forget to change that person's credit limit on the fly, then that person might be going on credit hold after the first time you do work. Okay. First month of fiscal year. Not everyone's fiscal year starts in January, so you might say it be February or March or April or May or June and so on. You can go ahead and set that. But a lot of people, especially with fertilization and during the wintertime, it's kind of their downtime. They might have their fiscal year start in January. Again, each company is different. I'm not going to tell you, you have to use that one or you have to use this number. Prepaid discount cutoff. This is for things like landscape deposits. I did do a crash course on landscape deposits and how those work. This pretty much is just saying that normally on like a work order job or any job or whatever that I set up for a deposit, they have to put 50% down and then they owe 50% time of service. But let's say they need to put 30% down. You can put 30 in there again. You decide how you want it to work. Disable installment billing. If you do not do installment billing at all, which means that you don't have anybody set up with stuff underneath this installment tab, and you're not going to do it, and you don't have anybody, you can actually remove that tab by check marking that disable installment billing. So let me see if this is one of those settings that updates immediately. I'll close that window out here. And here, you see, I don't even have that installment tab anymore. So again, if it's not even something you even offer or do, you can just turn that tab right off. So let's go back to our general setup here, and then our miscellaneous. All right, post installments during aging. Every night, your server, if you have a local one, or if you're a hosted customer, does do it. Every night, it runs through a data backup and aging process. Now, during that process, having this check mark says, if a customer has an installment charge on this date, post it. charge that customer's account that money. Again, it's up to you to decide if you want to use that. If you don't have this check marked and you do offer installments, then you will have to remember to manually post those installments. Otherwise, you might be doing work for people and never charging them. Non-installment, non-auto pay. Again, let's see what automatic charge statements in the next batch. Again, these are CAW settings. These are things that the CAW group can talk to you about. I don't know too much about them. I never really mess with them myself. In training, I just tell them, hey, these are the CAW settings. Now, for Service Assistant itself, and for you hosted customers, we're not talking about that VMware login, but for Service Assistant itself, you can force password complexity. Password complexity means it has to be 8 characters, 1 capital letter, 1 number, 1 lowercase letter type of thing, okay? You can also force periodic password changes. The periodic password changes means that every 30 days or whatever number you put in there, they have to change their password. Again, it's up to you to decide if you want to change it or not. Over here in the limit journal entry, this is you can set to say, all right, I want to allow my production, my adjustment, or payment journals to be put in 0 days early and maybe 100 days late or 30 days late. Again, it's up to you to decide what numbers you want to put in there. Now, with my training and test data, I actually put days early, but you're normally not going to say, hey, this person pays us or paid us next month. Again, you don't want to have that there, so you might want to have that 0. And again, as far as how back you want to go, again, it's up to you. I had mine set to 100 because, again, this is test data. This is for me to play around with things and try different scenarios. Maybe I want to try charge interest and see what happens because a customer has a unique setup. Again, it's up to you to put whatever numbers you want to put in there, but I don't recommend anything over 364. And the reason why is because you could accidentally put in for the last year, and that would be a bad thing because then your aging is going to be thrown off and so on and so forth. Usually I see 30, 60, 90. Again, it's up to you to put whatever number. I just don't recommend anything too big. All right. Now, you can set in hard dates. You can say, you know what, I only allow production entry dates from, let's say January 1st of 2015 to December 31st of 2015. But you got to be careful with these settings because what would happen is in January of 2016, if someone received a payment, when they go to put it in, it would say, oh, sorry, you can only do it from January 1st of 2015 to December 31st of 2015, and would go to the oldest date or the latest date possible. So again, I've ran into that. I've gotten that support call before where someone didn't update it before they went on vacation, and because of that, their employees weren't able to enter information. I told them, I said, well, you'll have to talk to someone, get those things changed. So again, it's one of those things that I usually don't recommend doing it, but you can put those hard dates in there if you want. And of course, again, production, payments, and adjustment journals. Over here on the left side, computer adds sold date. This is where you tell the computer when you activate a sale, when you put it into one of those green statuses, give it today's date as a sold date. Again, you can always change that on the fly. Maybe you're kind of backed up a little bit and you're actually putting your sales in on Friday and it's Monday. You can change the date to Monday and so on and so forth. But again, that's where things like the limit past sales date comes into play. Okay. Now you can also say, add the sold date after the first program's service has been performed. That means that the first round was done or the first round was done and actually had money applied to it, either through an adjustment or a payment. So again, you can choose how you want the software to behave. I'd be careful about this though too, is because if you go to run a sales report and you're saying, well, I sold a whole bunch of stuff in January, but you haven't actually done anything in January, well, again, the system's not going to be able to find it because you haven't done anything in January yet. And so therefore the sold date did not get January's sold date. Same thing with special jobs. And again, if you're doing like a repeating special where you're doing like a lawn mowing and going over there over and over and doing the same service, again, you can say either the first time we did the work or first time money got applied towards it, paid. Like I said, it's up to you guys how you want to say store it, how you want the software to behave when you're doing stuff. Some of this terminology, some of these words, it'd be nice if they kind of rephrase things a little bit to make them clearer, but don't prompt to change other services during status during save. What that means is if you have an active customer, and let's say they have a fertilization, a grub control, and an aeration, and they cancel out their grub control, with this unchecked, it will actually ask you if you want to cancel their fertilization and their aeration. Okay, if you check mark it, it's not going to prompt you. Now, if you cancel the customer out themselves, it's just going to cancel everything out. All right. But again, it's up to you to decide if you want it to ask you to change the status to other jobs. Now, you got to be careful with this too, because if you do have it prompted to ask you, and you just go click, 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 you could accidentally cancel out the customer's jobs, and you'd have to just go back into the jobs you want to keep and then reactivate them. Usually people have it turned off, so therefore they do get prompted if they want to. All right. Don't allow active program jobs to be all skips and ends. When you have a program on a screen, when you add it to a customer, they're going to have the Y status, means yes, we're going to do this work, or you can have an N status, like no, we're never ever going to do this job, or you can give it a skip code saying, you know what, we're planning to do this, but we're not doing it this season, so we're going to give it a skip code, and then when we do our renewals, those skip codes become Ys for yes, do them next year. Again, it's up to you to decide how you want the software to behave, and it's saying right now, don't allow all those rounds of the program to be skips or ends, because why would you want to add a program to a customer if you're not doing anything for them? Now, if you say, well, I'm setting up for this year so I can renew it next year, well, why not just add it for next year? So again, you can, most people usually tend to leave that check marked. Password change all sold and cancel dates. Again, very good idea to have that in there, so only people that have access can make those changes. Allow changing program to a different type. If you actually add a program or service to a customer, a program to a customer, and you haven't done anything, like you haven't done any production on, or things like that, you can actually change it from one program to a different one. Meaning, let's say you have a silver, a gold, and platinum lawn care program, and the customer signs up with silver, and you haven't gone out and done anything with them yet, and they want to have a gold package because you talked to them, or even talked to them in the platinum package. This allows you to change that program without having to cancel it out and then re-add it as a new one. Again, most people tend to do that. Show standard price instead of average price. Standard price is the most common price that's in that program. So let's say you have a 5-round program with additional 6-round for grub control, and those 5 rounds are $50 and that grub control is $150. Well, the standard price is going to be $50 because $50 is the most common price. Now, if you want to, you can uncheck it, and then it's going to show the average price. It's going to add up all those rounds, the price for all those rounds, and then divide it by the number of rounds. Allows price change after invoice is printed. Again, it'd be nice if they actually spelt out as invoice and stuff, but again, I'm not a programmer and I really don't have any say in that. But allow price change after invoice is printed. Again, people want the ability to make those changes if need to. But keep in mind, if you do change a price on an invoice, you may also want to make sure to print out a new copy of it, just so your customer has the correct pricing on the copy if they want it. Copy customer sources to new services. Again, most people do have this check marked, and what that means is when you have a source on a customer, keep in mind a source is how they found out about you. It's going to by default copy it to any new services they have. Now, you might want to change it, For example, let's say you go out and do fertilization, you pull up the truck and say, hey, you guys do aerations. And like, oh yeah, we do aeration. I want to get signed up for that. Well, the source of the aeration would be Saw the Truck, not Yellow Pages, or not referral that the customer originally came to you for that fertilization program. Again, you can override it. Just is going to fill that in there for you, especially if it's a required field. You may want to have that checked. And again, most people tend to have it checked. Allow blanking of invoice print dates. This allows you to change it on the program screen. You can change a service from the printed status to a Y status, and it will blank out that invoice print date. If not, you would actually have to do the undo invoice or undo invoice batch in order to unprint it. Force date codes to be numeric. Date codes are another filtering feature when you're pulling your work. This is saying that they have to be in numbers. Enforce valid zip and postal codes. This means that zip code or postal code has to be on your zip code table. Again, most people want to keep that in there so you don't mistype the zip code and not be able to send mail out to those customers. Prohibit rescheduling of skips. Most people have that turned off. Prohibit rescheduling of skips means that if you skip out a service, let's say you skipped round 1 because you think it's too late in the year, and no, this lawn really does need that round 1. They really do need that pre-emergent or whatever. This allows you to reschedule it. And again, most people tend to have this unchecked because they want to be able to reschedule. Show security card code. When you print out the security card panel, it's going to have a line for the security card information. This just means it's going to section off that, and then it's going to have a spot where they can put that 3 or 4 digit CCV number in there. Report logging. Now, report logging means you can actually keep track of who runs what reports. Normally, by default, we have that turned off because if you have it turned on and you run a lot of reports, that can really make your database big really quick. But let's say you're concerned about a salesperson that might be trying to siphon off customers or something like that, and you want to know what reports they're running. What you can do is you can actually check mark that to turn that on, and then give a call to Real Green, and we can actually pull that information out of the database for you. Okay, call log entries. let's say you have a customer, let's say you have some employees, like salespeople and stuff like that, and a call gets sent to one salesperson, and you don't want another salesperson to be able to go in there and change it or change information in that call log to make it look like it was sent to that person initially. Lock call log entries means you can't edit those call log entries except for the one you're adding at that moment. Quick note, there is a button called Quick Note on the customer's contact screen. If you turn it off, it changes the button to timestamp. Most people have it on there. And again, when we talk about call logs, call log video that I may or may not do, I'll go into more detail about that. So, in a nutshell, that's the miscellaneous tab. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. So this is going to be the end of part 1. And then part 2, we'll go ahead and talk about the estimate parameters and server file locations and message. So see you in a few minutes. Or see you in a little bit. Bye.